we could quiet down, please. Quiet down in the house, right? Quiet up front. I want to move forward. And who here still has a question? If you have one in your hand, raise your hand real quick. All right, so everybody's giving their questions. I know that they're going through the questions that are being submitted. As promised, I'm trying to give equal time to both sides. Robin Gray, who's a township resident, I had actually bumped off the panel originally to try to make things fair on both sides. With Mr. Alvey and Mr. Bramley taking 10 minutes, I told Robin that because that, try to be fair to both sides, that I would give her the opportunity to speak, and I think she is going to avail herself of that opportunity. Is that right, Robin? No, Ron's going to go next. Yeah, he's going to go next. I just wanted to make sure that I'm correct, right? Okay. So that's just so I can be fair to everybody. I'm trying my best to do it, and I know that it's never easy to do. Just out of curiosity, I know that there are numerous public officials here. If you're a public official, could you please stand? Okay. And I know that our public officials represent various areas. If you stand just from the front to the back, just if you could say it as loud as you can so they know where you're from and who you represent.
Rick Dumper, Chatham Township Trustee.
Jim Lively, Westfield Township Trustee. Tracy Hanley.
Holly Conley, York Township Trustee.
Okay.
Matt Covermeyer, Medina Township Zoning.
Thanks, Matt.
Jill Keller with the Medina County Auditor's Office.
Okay. Yeah, Kathleen is here. I was wondering why I didn't see her stand up. I was wondering if she, decided to abdicate her position. I don't know. But Brunswick Hills Township has a representative here as well. And Kathleen, is she the chairman of your board again this year? Or? Okay. So anyway, those are our public officials. Oh, go ahead. Okay, thank you. All right, so you can see we have a mix of the surrounding communities. I know that Commissioner Handley's here. Commissioner Frederick sent his regards. I told him I'd say that. He was unable to make it tonight, even though he wanted to be here. And without any further ado, we'll move forward. Ron Prosek's next. And Ron, if you could come up, just give yourself a brief introduction of who you are, and we can move forward. Thank you. There's Kathleen right there. I introduced the public officials, and you just have to be going.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Ron Prosek, and I'm Vice President of NEOGAP, the Network for Oil and Gas Accountability and Protection. I'm going to put up a slideshow, if you'll just pause for a moment. My thanks to Rhonda Reeder for letting me use her computer. I know it's now, I really know it's her computer. See if I can master the technology there. Okay, so my organization is NEOGAP. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I think that's an issue we should think about is full disclosure. I'm going to disclose a few things about myself. I am not paid by anybody. I am not paid by my organization. I'm a volunteer. I'm like a lot of you. I'm an interested citizen. My community has been affected by oil and gas drilling, and we're facing the possibility of fracking coming into our county, Lake County, where I live. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. To their credit, those folks on the panel on my right here who are representing the industry, they have disclosed their backgrounds and they gave you their organization names that they represent. But every day, and this is one of my pet peeves, so I'm going to share this with you if you don't mind. Every day I turn on TV, and I think, I'm sure an hour will not go by when I will not see a commercial from ANGA, the American Natural Gas Association, or API, the American Petroleum Institute. And it just, you know, as a critic of fracking, it's really irritating to see these commercials. Not just because of what they're trying to do, but the way they do it. They show you scenes of children running through grass and families gathered around the kitchen table and tell us how wonderful it is that they're producing natural gas for America. And we have this new process, by the way, that helps us get more out of the ground. They kind of gloss over what that process is. The process is fracking, but it isn't just hydrofracturing of shale that we're concerned about. We're concerned about the entire process of mining of shale. It's not the same as the old, as I call it, Grandpa's gas well in the back 40. This is something different, in spite of what the industry would have you believe. Now, I'm not going to show you all the diagrams because Mike's gone through that, but I'm going to show you a few slides that point out the difference between conventional drilling, straight down drilling into sandstone, typically Clinton sandstone in Ohio, at a depth of about 3,500 feet or so, 3,800 feet. But really, what we have now is a much heavier process. This is really properly called slickwater hydraulic fracturing. It uses more water, much more water. Instead of using 100,000 gallons per frac, we're talking 5 to 8 million gallons per frac. Each well is fracked multiple times, 10, 12, up to 15 times. It uses more chemicals than were used in the past. Yes, Clinton sandstone was fracked with chemicals, but not as many chemicals. There are more toxic air emissions, more heavy truck traffic, more toxic waste required disposal. We've heard that talked about earlier this evening in terms of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. And basically we're talking about industrial scale operations, huge scale operations. This is a chart you may not have seen. This was developed by Professor Marc Durand of the University of Quebec at Montreal. He was part of a provincial government panel that did a study on what fracking of Utica shale, by the way, Utica shale is the same kind of shale we have in Ohio, Utica shale in Quebec. And what he said in his study was that the problem with the horizontal, the laterals going out into the shale is that they can cross natural faults in the geology. And when you do that, any gas or fluids that are in that formation can go up that fault, can travel up that fault as high as the aquifer, or even higher, even to the ground level. Based on that study that was done by that panel of scientists led by Professor Durand, the province of Quebec has stopped all hydrofracking of shale in the province because, and the report says this, the farmland of Quebec is too valuable to risk. Professor Durand said that these wells, inevitably, even after they are plugged, they will leak. And they will gush methane through the surface of the ground. It may not be for 10, 20, more likely 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years. So this is a long-term problem, even after the well is plugged. Okay, there's going to be tremendous competition for water resources. I'm not going to go into all of these things, because you've probably heard many of them before. But I want to talk about this chart briefly. It was mentioned before. This is a chart, this is a study that was done by Schlumberger, Schlumberger is an industry consultant. They work for the oil and gas industry. And you can see that in their chart, if you can see it, after a year or two, 10% of the cement casings fail in wells. After about 17 years, around the 17-year mark, you're up to around 50%. Half the wells have cement failures. Now, cement failure means that the cement pulls away from the annulus and creates a space through which gas and fluids can communicate up to higher levels of geology, even up to the surface, so and into your water, into aquifers. After about 30 years, we're up to about 60% failure rate. I recently saw a video online on YouTube of a professor from the University of Pittsburgh His name is Conrad Volz. And he said, and he's a public health expert, but he has studied wells in relation to public health. And he has said that from his studies, every single well fails eventually. Every single one. It's just a question of when the cement will fail. The cement will fail. Because cement, if you just take a look at the cement in your patio and the bricks in your patio, you know that it shrinks over time, it separates. It's just a natural process. And the metals that are used, the metal casings, don't last forever. Have you ever seen metal in the ground that lasts forever, that doesn't rust or deteriorate? It does. This is another problem that you need to be aware of, are these fugitive emissions. You're not only going to have emissions from the well itself, you're going to have emissions from the tank batteries that are going to have to be constructed. You're going to have emissions from the pipelines. You're going to have emissions from trucks. You're going to have spills from trucks. But again, this is a very high, intense process. It's not going to be a few trucks. It's not going to be a single well. This is a well pad. This is a typical well pad for shale drilling. This is from Pennsylvania. 5 acres. They're going to come in, they're going to clear 5 acres of land. They're going to construct the well pad. Eventually the well pad can have as many as 6, maybe as many, even higher. But typically they're predicting for Pennsylvania and Ohio about 6 wellheads per pad. So, and then each of those will have horizontals, maybe 4 horizontals. Each of those 6 will be fracked several times, each time 5 to 8 million gallons of water. Now, I want to make 2 final points. It was mentioned before that this is a question of you weighing individual risk. That's true, but there's an even bigger issue. This is a community issue. A community issue, not just an individual issue. Think about it, a landowner can sign a lease and he can have a well on his land, he can have one of these pads on his land. He can take the risks. He can sell his land and leave, if he can sell his land after he has something like this on it. But guess what? He can leave. The community remains. What is your community going to be like as this process goes forward? And I'm talking about scaling up. Yeah, 1 well, 2 wells, 3 wells. What about when you have 12, 15, 20 wells in your township? What about when you have several hundred wells in your county of this type? Well, we don't have to guess about this. We only have to look at other states that are ahead of us in this process. So let's take a minute and look at a county in West Virginia. This is Wetzel County, West Virginia. The people in Athens County, Ohio, had the same thought. They wanted to find out what might happen to Athens County, Ohio in 5 years if fracking goes forward in Athens County. So they took a field trip to Wetzel County, West Virginia, and they put together a report for their county commissioners. And this is, I'm going to read you a little bit from the report. I'm going to try to paint a picture for you of what their county looked like 5 years into fracking. Quote, Chesapeake has about 140 wells permitted in Wetzel County, and many additional wells and permits exist in other companies. What was once miles of bucolic forested and agricultural West Virginia countryside is now a rural, industrial, petrochemical complex. As we drove around the county, it was common to see ridge tops that had been locked off by 18 to 55 feet that were now covered by gas wells, storage tanks, compressor stations, and huge storage ponds, many with slipping dams. It was disturbingly easy to imagine our area transformed in the same way. Landowners documented many instances of clouds of noxious gas rising up the hillsides, illegal releasing and pluming of gas streams, and significant diesel pollution from the vast number of trucks, heavy equipment, drill pumps, frac pumps, and gas flaring. With drilling and high-volume trucking operations continuing 24/7, noise levels were constantly overwhelming. And the air constantly smelled of diesel fumes, plus vented and flared gases from the wells. Flaring gases created breathing problems for nearby residents, and flared gas condensate was noted in ground areas. We witnessed the aftermath of several landslides, where water holding ponds the size of football fields had dams fail and slip off the hillside. We observed miles of temporary water lines strung out along the roadside. Chesapeake, and by the way, Chesapeake is the big player in Ohio, Chesapeake had connected temporary 8-inch plastic flexible water pipe staked to the road shoulders with rusted metal T-posts and snaked for miles to bring fresh water to the drill sites. Some declared that it looked like a third world engineering. The rural beauty was destroyed by the ugliness of the jury-rigged pipe. While on our tour, a Chesapeake heavy-duty pickup truck wrecked off the steep side of the road. The road edge had given way. And I'm not going to read all that, but there's a lot of road damage involved, and I'm going to show you some slides of that in a minute. But to continue with their report, getting toward the end of their report, quote, and this is very important, there was no wealth effect in evidence, and Mary Lynn alluded to this before. There was no wealth effect in evidence. There was no indication that money went back to the community. Wetzel County still has the highest unemployment in West Virginia. We saw poverty, pipelines, wealth extraction, and large-scale devastation of the landscape. Where they had previously farmed for years, they now cannot use the 5-acre drill pad areas for the next 25 years, while still having to pay the full property taxes on those parcels. There were social consequences as well. We heard stories from residents about the disruption of the social fabric of the community, problems with numerous outsiders who had no regard for the community, increased crime, increased drug use, and drug dealing, local girls becoming pregnant with out-of-state fathers, simply disappearing, and the need for community action groups to carry guns for protection, end quote. That last allusion to guns has to do with the fact that this had become a company county, and people that were speaking out against the company were finding that they were getting beaten up or their property was being attacked. And so for their own safety, they felt they had to carry guns. So they felt their liberty, eventually their liberty was even lost. Now, I want to show you some pictures of the road damage that you might encounter. By the way, this is the way, this slide shows how farmland can be broken up by these pads. So you have the pads located in different places, and then you have roads connecting them. Well, it breaks up the countryside. Go ahead that way. Okay, this shows the heavy industrial aspect of it, some of the machinery that is assembled to do this. But these are pictures from Pennsylvania, and you can see the heavy truck traffic plays heck on the roads. These are asphalt roads, and eventually you're going to see one of them is being pulverized, and then you'll see it turned into mud, basically a mud road. That's what came out of it. How am I doing on the time?
Okay. 14 minutes to this point.
Okay. Again, I want to explain the scale-up concept. We're only at the beginning of this process in Ohio. We have 100 wells permitted. As Mike explained, we only have 30 wells drilled so far. So you have to realize that we're only at the beginning, and we're going to get a lot more intense development out of this unless we stop it. We talked about regulations. I worked on a reform of Section 1509, the Oil and Gas Law, 2009, along with Senator Brendel and Senator Skindell. and my organization. We rewrote the entire Section 1509, and we put in reasonable regulations like 1,000-foot setbacks instead of 100-foot setbacks. We were working mostly on urbanized drilling because we felt it wasn't right to drill 100 feet from a home or a nursing home or a school. We thought that was kind of crazy. But guess what? The industry came in with its version of the so-called reform law, Senate Bill 165. Their bill got hearings, their bill got passed. Our bill never even got hearings. It got assigned to committee and went nowhere. We worked with ODNR. I'm afraid I have to tell you, I had very cordial relationships with Sean Logan, who was here tonight. We discussed many things. We had a good relationship. But as time went on, I learned that ODNR really was not going to help out Ohioans and protect them, because its main mission is to promote the development of oil and gas. And it's not designed to protect people from the harms that it might create. And it doesn't see its mission primarily that way. So because we have combined the enforcement power and the regulatory power and the permitting power in one agency, so that ODNR gets all of its funding from the permit fees. And that's not a good system. Okay, it does not work. So, and I have to say, state officials have not been very helpful. And I'm talking about Democrats and Republicans. Nobody gets off the hook. And this is my experience, working on this since 2008. In the federal government, same thing. Exemptions from all these environmental laws. If your community wants protection, you are going to have to act yourselves. And what do I mean by that? Sandra referred to it before. First of all, you have to become educated. Then you have to organize and join her group. Join the group that she's got going here in this community. And work with your public officials. Your local elected leaders are the elected people closest to you. And study the CELDF concept, the community rights and human rights-based concept, where you can enact a ban on fracking in your community. If you decide that's what you want to do. And I know education is the first part of this. I can't tell you what to do. It will be your community's decision. But we'll help you in any way that we can help you. I know that Sandra is prepared to help anybody that she can, but she needs your support. Your community needs your support. And talk to your public officials. Educate them. Let them educate you. Have a dialogue with them. And in the end, with all due respect to the public officials here tonight, if your public officials will not help you, you know what to do. Change them. Thank you.
All right, before I move on to Rhonda, like I said, since 10 extra minutes were used that I didn't originally plan for from pro side, I said I'd give 10 minutes to the other side, and I think Robin, I said I'd give you the opportunity. So this would be your time if you want to speak. Okay? So come on up. What's Bob, what's his name from Family Feud? Oh no, Bob from Price is Right. Come on down. Bob Barker. I think I'm from Happy Gilmore, but I mean, it shows you where I'm from.
Hi everyone, I've never done this before, so please bear with me. I'm a resident of Medina Township. I have been for about 18 years. I'd like to just say a few things about what I have seen since I have gotten involved with Medina Township 2 years ago. I started attending the town hall meetings religiously every other Thursday night, you know, get together with Ray and Mike and Sally Gardner, and now we have Ken DeMichael. You know, I've owned my home for 18 years. I've played by the rules. I've kept my head down. I've gone to work every day. I've paid my mortgage off. And I'm looking forward to the future and retiring in this community. I'm very disappointed that a small group of people in the state capitol made decisions that are going to affect all of us. There's close to 11,500,000 people that live in this lovely state. And I'm appalled by the fact that a few people can go ahead and make these decisions that are going to affect our water, our air, and our land. And we don't have any say over it. In 2004, the General Assembly in the Capitol, they made the decision to pull away the permit laws for zoning for our townships and our cities for gas and oil leases and drilling. So this I'm shocked by, because I always thought that our founding fathers designed our government so that we'd have checks and balances as far as the federal, the state, and the local government, okay? Now keep in mind, I am not a politician and I am not an environmentalist, okay? I'm just your average person that goes to work every day, takes care of my mom and all my brothers and sisters, and I just try to do the right thing. What has happened of recent and what's going to happen in our lovely state reminds me of what I have just recently gone through in the housing debacle that took place in the last 3 years in our great nation. I work in the financial industry. I have for 30 years. I sell fixed income products, bonds, municipal bonds, corporate bonds, U.S. treasuries. What I have seen in the last 3 years and what has brought this great nation to our knees, I now see a similarity developing with the hydrofracking, the slick water hydrofracking. What has happened is where